Hello everyone, we get to compare Adobe versus Affinity, AI Tool Edition. So I did an AI comparison of the image trace tool in both of them, and you guys really loved it. So what if I compared all the AI tools that Affinity offers through Canva and pair that against Adobe, the big powerhouse of AI? Let's see if it's worth that extra triple increase of price of $60 to $70 a month for the Adobe subscription versus the $20 or $15 a month for the Canva subscription, which allows you to use the AI tools in the new free Affinity software. So let's see if that free Affinity software with that $20 AI upgrade is worth it. So I am here in the new free Affinity. This is free to download, but it does cost a little bit extra to use those AI tools. And so I had to sign up for a free trial. So I haven't paid yet, but anytime you go to this Canva AI button, it's going to list all these Canva AI tools, and you just pay about $15 to $20 a month, depending on where you are in the world and how many users you need. So let's see if it's worth it. I've used Adobe for many years. The AI tools there, the generative fill options have been really cool, but it took a while for them to get better. And so far, I've reviewed this, and let's see if it can catch up, because I think it's where it was a few years ago with Adobe, where they're going to need to put some more time into it, but let's not judge it quite yet. So we're going to start with the generative expand, meaning you expand an image and it uses AI tools to figure out what is going to populate in the expanded background. So we have this simple image of this woman, and we are going to use the expand tool. So here's all your AI tools that are in Affinity, and I'm in the Canva AI button. And here it is. It's called Generative Expand Tool. So Adobe has something very similar to this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to simply increase the background, and I'm just going to press enter, and it's going to calculate. And so something interesting why this is generating is I'm actually on my husband's laptop. That's because I have a 2020 Intel-based Mac laptop, and none of the generative fill options or any of the AI tools in Affinity work with old Intel laptops. I haven't seen anyone talk about this yet. So I'm actually having to use another computer to be able to use these tools, and I don't have to do that in Adobe. I can use all the Adobe tools fine. We have this result. So it took that little piece of a building and it tried to expand upon it. It had no clue how to do that because it doesn't have a reference photo. It looks kind of natural, I think. I mean, better than some of the other results I got when I was doing testing. And you can also super resolve, which allows you to kind of upgrade or upscale some of the resolution of the generative fill options. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And as a note, I did this in practice a few times, and it did halt my computer. I had to restart the program because Affinity did crash a couple times. So just letting you know, it's still a little buggy. So as you can see, it was able to upscale it, but it does have that kind of classic AI upscaling where it just kind of makes it a little bit too sharp. I can definitely tell it's AI. But if you were to zoom out and look at this photo, it doesn't look bad at a distance, but let's try to generate a different variation. So all I have to do is generate a different variation. So this is what before, and this is enhanced. I actually kind of like it before. It looks a little bit more natural. I think the enhanced just overly sharpened it and didn't make it look really good. So let's generate a different variation of that expand. Oh, we have a friend. All of a sudden she has a friend next to her and an entirely different building. So that's a different option. Let's try one more time. Okay, we have another building. Of course, it's not going to know what building is there because it doesn't have that reference photo to know where she's at in the world. This one, I've never seen a building like that ever before. It looks cool, but doesn't look quite as natural, especially when you zoom in and look at the details. So it's all about the details and believability. And I don't know if this is quite working well. You can see where it didn't quite blend that either. So interesting. Got some interesting options here, some workable. I've noticed you have to generate at least 30 of these things to get a realistic option, but there's some like that one right there is probably the most believable. And when you go here in Affinity, you have this extra layer, just like Adobe, that you can toggle on and off, and you can either have it or not. I kind of wish it just naturally blended this. I'm going to see how Adobe does to make it not look like such a sharp transition with the expand. So let's head on over to Adobe and see how it handles the same exact tool. Adobe Photoshop. I'm back on my real laptop, not on my husband's laptop. I feel so good to be back with a much bigger screen. So let's try to do expand tools in Adobe Photoshop. We're going to get the crop tool, and let's see. Let's do about the same as what we did before. I believe it's almost double. And let's go ahead and do, we have an option of doing different ratios, and that's about it. So let's go ahead and do generative expand. We're not going to give it any ideas. We just want to see what the other one did. We want to try to do as a direct comparison as we can and let it guess. All you have is this little sliver right there of a building. So let's see how it elaborates it like Affinity did. Okay, let's zoom in. Okay, that absolutely that's actually worse than Affinity so far. So let's see what 3 options it gave us. That's even worse. That's a little more natural. So when you zoom out, you can't really tell. That's a little more natural. I could probably edit that out. Let's generate another set of 3. Holy smokes. We have London. We have, I guess it thought it was London, but that doesn't, that looks so bad. Oh, Adobe. That looks a little better, but when you zoom in, not working. Let's do the last one. No, none of these are working. So interesting how I think Affinity won this round with the generative expand. I really thought the other ones were bad. This is extra bad. Come on, Adobe. Let's see if I can add a prompt and make it better. So let me delete this. Let me go back into my history. Let's start all over, and let's do a generative expand about the same length, but let's say London in the background. Let's be very specific and see if it helps to change it. Okay, better, but what's up with Big Ben? Big Ben's not looking too good, is he? And I've lived in London for several months, and that does not look anything like the buildings that you got downtown right next to. It just doesn't work. So let me see what the second one is. These are terrible. I don't like any of them. Oh, we got the shard, kinda, I guess. I have no clue what's going on here. So I think both of them failed, but I do think Affinity still somehow won this round. But maybe this was a tough one because there's not a lot to fill in, and it took that little sliver of a building and it really messed it up. So it makes me wonder. I really want to get this to try to work. If I crop this out and see how it does, because it's getting really confused with that little tiny sliver of a building. It really wants to make buildings. So let's go ahead and do it again, and let's not prompt it with anything. Let's see what it does. Much better. So it was that tiny little sliver of building, a couple pixels at the end of the photo that was really messing it up. That's nice. So let's go ahead and do 2. Anytime it generates buildings, I think it saw this little Big Ben and wanted to generate buildings. It'll pick up on something and go crazy with it. So let's go back to this. This is kind of what I was looking for, or maybe a little building or some. But yeah, I think sometimes you'll have to edit these photos to kind of make sure that little sliver right there was tripping it up. It was wanting to make this gigantic building. So sometimes you have to crop before you expand, if that makes any sense. Now let's see how Affinity handles the Generative Fill tool. This has been something Adobe has been working on for years and has slowly refined it over all those years. Let's see how this new tool can keep up. So they have 2 options in Affinity. There's a Generative Fill tool, which you can select a certain location and replace it, or global edits, where you could just generate something, a change globally on the picture. So let's say we want to give the man some sunglasses. This has always been such a challenge for Adobe's tool, and let's see how it does it. So I'm selecting Generative Fill, and first, actually, let me go and make a rectangle selection. I'm going to make a big wide selection so that it has enough area to work with. And now we can go to Generative Fill, and let's see what we could do here. So let's do aviator sunglasses with black trim. Let's be very specific. We can be even more specific than that. Let's do 3, and then let's click on apply. And one thing I want to talk about is generative credits. So in Adobe, you usually get like 2,000, they keep changing it. They give you like 2,000 generative credits each month if you have a paid subscription. With the paid subscription with Canva and Affinity, they don't tell you how much credits you have. It's still something they're working on. So how do I know when I'm almost out of credits and I'm no longer able to generate? How many can I generate compared to Adobe? Well, we don't know yet. They're working on it, the information that I was able to find. Of course, that can change. Wow, what? It filled the whole space, which I think Adobe does that too, but maybe I should have made the space a little smaller. Holy moly, there's just some large glasses. Oh, they're all large. And, oh, okay. Well, I mean, it did generate the glasses. They're just extra large. Let's try to do a global edit instead. So what I'm going to do is I can just delete this layer. I don't need that anymore. And let's try a global edit, which is right below the generative fill tool. You could just go generative edit tool so you can make a global edit. So I want the man to have aviator sunglasses with black frames. Make it look natural. Okay, so let's see what it does. Much more natural. And I think that's the same way in Adobe. Sometimes it's better to do a global edit, but did it change the man in any significant way? That is the key to good AI edits, is it doesn't change anything outside of what you request. So let's go ahead and toggle this on and off. Let's go ahead and go in our history and see what it looked like before. So I'm going in my history panel and just going back a step or 2 steps. So this is before and after. So there are some, not a huge amount of differences. It made it kind of a higher contrast here and higher shadows. So it didn't change the overall shape of the man's face, but it did make it darker. And I don't like that. I want to keep it exactly how it was, but just add glasses. So that's interesting. We'll have to see how Adobe does with this picture. Now we're in Adobe Photoshop. Let's see how their generative fill adds sunglasses to the man. So let's go ahead and do a selection. I'm going to do a fair comparison. I'm going to do about the same selection. Let's make it wide and see if it does the same effect and see if we need to do a global edit. So generative fill, and we're going to do the firefly model. Oh, that's a lot better. It didn't do the entire space. It kind of knew to not do that. And this is with Firefly model and not Google, which Firefly is not quite as good as the Google one, which we'll do that later. But wow, that's not terrible. It does change his ears a little bit. So you can see how his ears went down when I did that one. So not a fan of that. But I think one of these is at least usable. Perhaps the first one. So if you do a comparison, I think Adobe won this round with that selective fill space being filled out appropriately. So there you go. We're going to put a glove on this man's hand. So we're just going to do the global generative edit tool edits, and we're going to say, put a glove on the hand. We're going to be pretty specific about that. And this drives me nuts. I have to select the image first. That's just driving me nuts. Okay, now let's see. Okay, wow. I don't know why. I just have this he's flicking me off kind of feeling from this picture. Okay, let's generate some different variations of that. Put a glove on the man's hand. Make it of course, it's up to me to decide what kind of glove, but I'm just testing it out. So what I'm looking for is how much of the original photo is it keeping and how much is it changing. It should be, this is what it came up with, but it should keep that exact hand profile. Say that the pinky is pointing a little bit to the left. That's exactly how it should keep it, and then put the glove on it. It shouldn't change things. And that's what early Adobe Firefly generative fill stuff did years ago, and they fixed that a lot, especially since they've added Google's Nano Banana as a third-party option in Adobe. That has really helped, and I'm not seeing it here. You're just going to get something random, which could work if you're just doing something quick, but if you really want to edit and change something and keep the original picture intact and just make a little change, you're going to start running into some issues. All right. Now we're going to do the generative fill tool, but what we're going to do is we're just going to select a small area and we're going to add a little rowboat and see how it does. So I have my selection. I'm going to go to generative fill and I'm going to say, make a small little rowboat. I'm not going to say if there's a man in it or anything, just make a small little rowboat in the water. I'm just going to say in the water. I don't know if that's going to mess it up or not. I'm going to do several options because I can. I don't know how many credits I have, so I have to be careful. All right, there's a tiny, they decided to put a man in it. That's fine. I didn't clarify. I don't know what that is floating in the water, but that's a weird artifact. And okay, is that a wooden shape of a tie? I don't know what on earth these two are. That doesn't make any sense. That one's the only workable one. They added some seaweed here for some reason. So let's generate some more, make it more specific. Make a small little rowboat with a man inside with a yellow jacket on in the water. So let's generate some more variations. Wow, it's like a little Lego man. He's so cute. Look at him. Wow. That's cool if that was what I was going for, but wait, where's his face? Oh my gosh, where's his face? That's creepy. All right, let's see what other variations they did. Oh, we have this one with this very long stick. This is so reminding me of 3 years ago when Adobe first came out with Firefly. This is the kind of stuff it generated. Just not believable stuff and random artifacts and places. So I think that's kind of happening here. I want to give Canva and Affinity the benefit of the doubt that this is their first release of AI tools in Affinity. It will get better over time. I really hope it does because I like Affinity. I'm not out here to hate on Affinity, and I'm not out here to love on Adobe. I'm here to find the truth between both programs and what works for you guys. That's what I'm here for. I don't get paid by anybody. So let's try one more project with this tool and then we'll head on over to Adobe and see how it does with generative fill. So let's see how it does with taking a forest photo and making it a different season. So let's go ahead and do a global edit. We're going to go down to generative edit tool with vivid colors. Make this forest the fall season. The fall season, I guess you could say autumn if you're in Europe. Make this forest the fall season with vivid colors. Once again, I keep forgetting to select the background first. So that's just I don't know why I don't know if Adobe automatically does it. I'm not used to having to select it first, but I selected the picture. Then I have to go over here and let's go ahead. And I don't have any child layers. I haven't messed with this too much, but I'm guessing that means to preserve any other layers that are outside of the one image you're trying to edit. Okay, this is pretty much the same result I got yesterday. So what I don't like about it, it's reminding me of early generative AI. Very clunky, chunky, doesn't know quite what to do. There's a random fence here. Let's go backwards and see what it looked like before. There is a fence there, so that's normal. Keeping it there, just going back and comparing the rock. See, it makes the rock cartoony looking. It doesn't keep, I mean, it looked pretty good right there. I don't know why it needed to change a lot of it. It could have just made that a different color. So interesting, interesting comparison. Let's see that sun ray that was there before. So it kept the main branch here. It did a good job at keeping the basics together. It just needs to make it look more realistic. And it makes me wonder if I just need to literally type in hyper realistic and use some of those keywords. So I'm going to do that. Make it as hyper realistic as possible. Maybe I should say photorealistic. And once again, I did it again. I got to select the photo and then I can paste it in there. Well, that doesn't look realistic at all. So let's do another edit. We're going to do the generative edit tool, which will be a global edit to the whole photo. And let's make this woman have a blonde ponytail. Oh, and I need to make sure I select the background first, then do it, or this won't have the edit sign. So I just had to select it real quick. So make her hair put her ponytail, that probably sounds better. Put her hair into a ponytail and make it blonde. Oh, so it didn't really put her hair into a ponytail. Okay, so let's try that again. So select the image, then I'm going to go over to generative edit. I'm going to paste it in. Okay, it's not putting her hair into a ponytail. And I did this yesterday and it worked. So I'm not sure why it's a little unpredictable this time. I have to remember the exact prompt I use. Okay, well, we have the kind of half ponytail on the side thing. So if it was 1982, I think that looks cool. But that's not what I really meant. Okay, I'm going to try one more time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the original and see if it just needed to be reworded. Okay, well, it worked yesterday. I promise. I swear it worked yesterday. And one of the things that I didn't like about it is when they put her hair in a ponytail, they changed her face position. It was no longer a 2/3, but more of a profile side view. And I didn't want that. I wanted her to have the exact same face, position, view, profile, but with a ponytail. Now let's do the rowboat example. So I'm going to make a small selection, try to make it similar to how I did it in Affinity, and let's do a generative fill, and let's do a rowboat. That's what we did first. We just did a simple rowboat. We didn't say anything in particular. Is rowboat 2 words? I don't know. You should look at my spelling. Don't look at my spelling. It's bad. So just hang tight with me. I spell things badly, sometimes on purpose, just because I'm lazy. Okay. A little bit more believable, I think, than Affinity. Of course, I'm using Nano Banana by default. So this is kind of new. So you can now use Google's Nano Banana, which is way better than Firefly. But I think it'll cost a lot of generative credits. So it'll just cost you a little bit more in your monthly credit allowance. So you just have to keep that in mind. Like, use it for your best stuff ever. So I probably should do a Firefly just because that would be more of an equal comparison, because this is just going to be better. But let's just go with it. So I have this one, it just generated the one idea, but that's exactly what I wanted. It's a great looking rowboat. Let's do a rowboat, but instead, let's generate it with the built-in, this is Adobe's model as Firefly. Let's do this one released in October 2024. So you can see they haven't updated Firefly in a while. So that's why they wanted to add the Google Nano Banana, because it's way better. But you don't have that option in Affinity. Okay, so you're seeing a more fair comparison against Affinity, where it generates random pieces of artifacts and it has no clue what to do. This is Google Nano Banana. It did exactly what it needed to do. This is Firefly. It did the same, actually worse. It's worse than Affinity. I think Affinity did a better rowboat with their model. Of course, the only one that's beating all of them is Google, which is neither Adobe or Canva or Affinity. So Google wins this round, I guess, if they're even participating. But let's do the whole description. Let's do a rowboat with a man inside with a yellow jacket. And let's stick with Firefly to make it fair. It wouldn't be fair if I used Google, because it'd actually probably do a good job. All right, so this guy looks like he's pretty much, his boat's done. He's going to need a bigger boat. And his face looks quite horrific. We got a couple different options we can choose from. We have this man who is literally in the water. And then we have another man. He looks pretty happy, at least. But yeah, that none of these people, what did I say? A rowboat. Yeah, a rowboat with a man inside with a yellow jacket. I didn't say in the water. I didn't say like he's inside the water sinking. So epic fail. And I don't like any of them. I don't like Affinity or Firefly. Let's switch the model. So this is the benefit to Adobe, is you do have this third-party model. Let's see how Google does with this. Yeah, I could do this compared to that monstrosity. So this is Google's version. That looks great. The man doesn't look scary either. Let's zoom in. Yeah, he looks like a normal man. The boat, the shadows. Oh, great. That's kind of what I was looking for. So it looks like a Firefly, Adobe's Firefly fails. Affinity didn't do a fantastic job, but I actually thought Affinity won this round too. So far, Affinity's up a couple points. But Affinity doesn't have the option of the third-party Google Gemini, the Nano Banana option, which you do have in Adobe. And it actually does a good job. And I see why they partnered with Google, because their model, Firefly, is not doing very good. So now let's try to turn this into fall. So now in Photoshop, I'm going to see how this compares to our Affinity, where we turned a season to a different season. So let's just try generative fill first just to see if that works. So we're going to select the whole thing and we are going to do generative fill. I'm going to say change the summer to fall, make the colors vivid. And I'm debating on whether to do Firefly, but let's do Firefly just to make it fair, since Affinity does not have Google. Okay, wait, what did I say? I said change the summer to fall and make the colors vivid. I think that's pretty close to the same prompt I used. That's completely different than what I got. So let's see. Okay, that's totally different. Let's try again. Let's delete this. Let's try again. Let me use let's see, generative fill. Firefly is completely useless in this case. Let me do Gemini. Make this forest scene turn to fall. Use vivid colors. I think that might be a better prompt. Okay, decent. I feel like it's a little less cartoony than the Affinity version. Not perfect. Let me see if I could just toggle this layer visibility on and off. It kept everything pretty consistent. It didn't change anything. I feel like it did it a little bit better than Affinity, a little bit less chunkier. Still not quite as natural looking, but I do have one more tool that Photoshop has that Affinity doesn't have, and that's its neural filters. So I'm going to give that a try. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to go up to Filter, Neural Filters. And I'm going to go to Landscape Mixer. This is still in beta. It's been in beta forever. But it has the ability to be able to turn seasons, night and day. It's a specific tool designed for this exact purpose. So let's say I want to make it autumn. I'm going to max out that autumn. And you can make it night or day. I'm just going to do autumn for this one. So I like how you can mix that and have presets. And I'm going to click OK. So no, this is a way more realistic because it's actually having the leaves fall off the trees. It's not just changing the color like the other two examples did, but it's changing the structure of the leaves where they're actually acting like it's fall, which is kind of cool, I think. So that was before, after. I think that really wins because it's got that very specific tool to change night and day and the seasons. And it's got Harmonize and a couple other AI neural filter tools. Let me go ahead and show you that Affinity doesn't quite have yet. Maybe in the future they'll come out with more updates. Colorize, Super Zoom, all these things. There's a couple in Affinity that are available, but not quite to this depth. Adding a glove. So we're just going to select this area and let's do generative fill. Add a glove to the man's hand. We're just going to do that. We're not going to say any specifics because we want to do a equal comparison. So what I'm looking for is, did it change the position of the fingers? Absolutely it did. Worse than Affinity. So let's see the three options. Three terrible options we'll probably have. Okay, that is an entirely different direction of the hand, of the arm coming down. And what is going on here? Are you giving him like a injection? Terrifying is the word of the day. Terrifying. All right, so that failed, and I feel like Affinity did a better job, even though it changed the position of the hand. At least it didn't add different hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this layer, and I'm going to try again. All right, so this is Google's version. So let's do, I didn't ask it what kind of glove, so it just kind of guessed, but it's moving the fingers a little bit, not as much. Let me generate a second option. Okay, that's the best. You still have the pinky that's a little bit further away. So that's before, it's a slight shift, but that's the closest I've seen. Once again, Google Nano Banana as the third-party option is the winner of this, which is part of Adobe. So I guess in some ways you could say that means Adobe won, but Adobe's Firefly model is failing worse than Affinity's model. So Affinity's model that they use is better than Firefly's model. But you still can't beat Google. But Google costs money. It costs way more generative credits to use this. You can't use Google model all the time, or you'd run out of your credits for the month after like 30 different generations. So that's something to think about. All right, let's do the ponytail. So we are going to select her and let's do a ponytail. So generative fill, hair to a blonde ponytail. Of course, slightly different prompt. We're going to change it out of Google, make sure we keep it fair with Firefly. Wow, totally changed her face position. It did give her a ponytail correctly though, but it absolutely changed. So that's the original, her head position. I want her head to stay exactly the same. I just want to put it in a ponytail. It's not too much to ask for, I didn't think. So let's see what else we have. She is a swishing that ponytail back and forth, but that's not what I want. Oh, that's a totally different person. That's a totally different person. That's too bad. So we're going to try again with Google. So I'm saying keep everything else the same. I shouldn't have to say that. It should be assumed. So I'm going to go ahead and generate with Google one more time. Okay, so I have to state it. And I know it should be obvious that I don't want anything else about her to change, but with this particular AI prompting, you have to say don't change everything every single time, which you should assume that that would be the case. That's the best one so far. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So just make sure to put don't change a thing, which, gosh, you would think I wouldn't have to do that with every single generation. That is something that AI really needs to work on. It's just assuming, just making those changes, but don't change anything unless it's in the prompt. Just listen, add sunglasses. I shouldn't have to say add sunglasses, but keep everything the same. Of course I want to keep everything the same. I just asked you to add sunglasses. So that's how I did it. So I think Adobe did pretty great with that because of Nano Banana, because of Google. All right, so now let's try one last tool, and that's going to be the super resolution tool, or it's called upscaling in Adobe products. So upscaling, super resolution, I don't think they could use upscaling, maybe that's copyrighted, but this is the super resolution tool. So we could take I intentionally made this photo very, very small and saved it. So now it's kind of a little bit pixelated, really small. Let's see how it upscales. So this is the first time I've really used the tool. So let's do a side by side and let's scale it up. We can double it. I would say let's triple it because I believe Adobe has a 4 times. 4 times, and let's see, scale document to fit, sure. Oh, not bad at all. So you could see before, let me go back if I can go back before. That was before. This is after super resolve. Not too shabby there. So that's before, very blurry, and I was able to sharpen it very nicely. I'm actually pretty impressed with this one. Let's kind of see how Adobe does with this one. But so far, I really like the upscaling. That's probably the thing I would use the most as a graphic designer is clients sending you these really bad photos that are messed up and blurred and saved a million times, and you need to upscale them. I think this is probably the one tool that I would actually pay for. The generative fill stuff, I just don't have practical uses for that quite yet, but I do for this. And some of that portrait lighting and the expand tools, I could see where there's definitely some practical projects I can use with that. So I now want to try upscaling in Photoshop. So I'm in Photoshop and I have the same image that I used for Affinity, super small little thumbnail, and now I need to make this a 4,000 pixel image that's super crisp and high resolution. So they have something called Generative Upscale, and that's what I'm going to use here. So I went to Image, Generative Upscale. They have a couple of third-party options to use too, not just the Firefly Upscaler. So let me use that because Affinity doesn't have that option. So I'm going to use this Topaz Gigapixel, and we're going to do a 4 times increase. I'm not going to do the face recovery because I've tried this face recovery before, and sometimes it's mixed results. So I'm just going to leave that unchecked. So here it is upscaled, and compared to the Affinity version, I don't feel like it sharpened it kind of in the same way that Affinity did. It's still a little blurry. I mean, it did a pretty good job when you zoom in. I mean, it quadrupled the size. So that's a whole lot better looking than if I were to just blow it up 4 times. So in a way that's better, but I kind of like the way that Affinity add that little sharp detail to it. Let's try to do it in a couple different ways. So I'm going to delete this and try again. So generative upscale. Let's try Firefly's model. Let's do a 4x. This is the same exact image I did in Affinity, so I'm kind of wondering why it's not upscaling and sharpening it. I mean, it's upscaling it, but it's not making it high resolution looking. And that's kind of disappointing. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong because this is before, after. I'm not really seeing a huge difference at all in the sharpness and the quality. And maybe because the image started out as blurry, and that's the problem, but that's kind of the whole idea of upscaling something, is being to take something that's a little blurry and upscale it and make the quality better. So Affinity has this other cool tool that's called the Colorize tool, which allows you to take a black and white photo and be able to find original color and bring it out. So let's give it a try. So Colorize tool, we're going to go ahead and have our image selected first. That's always important. And I'm going to click over here at the Colorize tool. And there's a nice before and after preview. So let's do the mirror view, or we could do a side by side where we can drag it across. And right now it just looks like it's a sepia filter. So let's kind of add some saturation, maybe warm the temperature or cool it down. And let's click on apply. Oh, that's really actually pretty cool. You could see the redness in her lips. You could see kind of this gold and reddish color, and even kind of making her dress kind of this blue color. That's pretty cool. I really thought that was very effective. I know that Adobe has something similar to this, and we could do a direct comparison, but let's try it with one more photo. Here's another photo. Let's see how it does. I'm going to select the photo, go over to Colorize. We're going to do some kind of before and after so we can see. I like being able to drag this. Adobe does not have this, so this is probably my favorite thing that Adobe has that, or Affinity, excuse me, has that Adobe doesn't. Let's warm the temperature, not too warm. I kind of like it a little bit cooler, so you can have cooler and warmer. Saturation, of course, it's already desaturated, so I want to kind of really bring out those colors. And I'm going to apply. So you could tell she was in a forest scene. I think it did a great job bringing out the highlights in her hair, kind of a brunette brown hair. I thought that was really good. It's probably, of all the AI tools I've used in Affinity, this is probably my favorite, the Colorize tool. So now let's see how Photoshop colorizes and uses the Colorize tool that Affinity has. So they don't have a separate AI tool built in, but they do have a neurofilter for this. So we're going to go up to Filter and click on Neurofilters. And we are going to go down to Colorize, which I need to download. So this is what it looks like with default settings. I thought the vibrancy is a little bit better, better than Affinity. It did kind of mess up a few areas. Let me see if I can zoom in here. Right here, it didn't quite detect that was the same background, so it did different colors. That's the only kind of negative I see. This looks a little bit not consistent with the rest of her dress. So in terms of her dress, maybe this is a little bit too warm compared to the rest of her dress, a little too much orange in there. But I am able to make fine-tune adjustments. With the other one didn't have quite as many, just had saturation. This I'm able to separate the colors a little bit more, so you're just seeing that advanced option settings as that big comparison against Adobe and Affinity, which you're paying definitely a nice price for those added extras. You can have color artifact reduction. Let's see what that does. Noise reduction. So this is a more superior tool because it's specifically developed for this, and you have all those extra options. So let's do the other one. Let's do this picture. So we're going to go up to Filter and Neural Filters. Let's go to Colorize. Let's do the default in the middle settings. Oh, yes. I thought that did a lot better. I think it makes it more saturated without making it oversaturated. I feel like with Affinity, I put it to max saturation, and that was the brightest and the most vivid I could get. With this one, I think the colors look a lot better. You could have different profile settings too, like retro high contrast. Ooh, that looks really nice. Retro red. You could do blue browns. So you could have different kind of pre-mixed settings. Wonderful. So I do think Adobe wins the colorizing tool comparison. And another tool is the portrait lighting tool, which allows you to dynamically change the position of the light in a picture. So let's see if I can shift this around. You can actually see where the lighting changes in the entire picture. I thought this was really, really cool, well done kind of work. So you can change specific sizing, how much it's diffused, how much it reflects, the ambient light. So, I mean, you can have no light at all or have it all the way on max. You could change the radius size, the distance, and strength. So we could do a before and after, or actually let's do a side by side so we could see before. It's probably better to do side by side comparison. So this is before, and we could see after. So I thought that was really, really neat if you just want to do some subtle light direction changes on a photograph. And let's do it with this other one. So I'm going to go over here to portrait lighting. And this is one that I would really love to change the direction of the lighting from here to maybe behind the skull. But what I've noticed is it doesn't actually really take any kind of 3D effect. It doesn't like scan it and try to predict what's like a 3D model of it and be able to dynamically change the lighting. It really just kind of changes the highlights and shadows dynamically, but it doesn't actually do it in like a 3D sense where you can rotate it and actually have the light change. You can see almost zero effects when I put the light source over here. I would love if the whole lighting changed, and that would take a lot more processing power. I know I may be asking for a lot for that because you'd have to have it predict what's around the skull or what the 3D shape of the skull so that it could cast light in a totally different direction. That's kind of what I would love and looking for and wish kind of this tool did. Just a quick note about Photoshop, they don't exactly have a comparative tool yet. They are working on one, so I'm curious to compare them when Photoshop comes out with their version later on. So there you have it, a very exhaustive comparison of the AI tools of Affinity versus Adobe. In many ways, the generative fill really surprised me in Affinity. I heard it's bad, but it's not that bad, especially compared to Firefly's, Adobe's native model Firefly. That was terrible. So thank goodness Adobe has some of those third-party options to really make it competitive. And I do think when you add in the Google Nano Banana third-party, it is more superior. But when you take it away and compare it against Adobe's native AI model with Affinity and Canva's AI model, I think Canva actually came across a little bit better and with those tools. And I think Affinity has a couple tools that Adobe doesn't yet. And I think Adobe has a lot of tools that Affinity doesn't have yet. So you got to ask yourself, is it worth that extra price for Adobe? Adobe has lots of other options that Affinity just doesn't have. And I could do a separate video of all the things it doesn't have and all the reasons why you want to pay triple the price for Adobe. But not everybody has $80 a month to spend. And I think Affinity is a wonderful, wonderful free tool so far. And to be honest, I don't think any of the AI tools in both Affinity and Adobe are super worth it yet. Some of the select subject and the upscaling is probably the most useful tools, but the generative fill needs a lot of work. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave in the comments if you're Team Affinity or Team Adobe. Who do you think won this match? I also have another video to watch. I compare the image trace tools to both Affinity and Adobe, so let me know what you think of that too. And let me know what you think you want to hear more about with both of these softwares. I hope you enjoyed this comparison. In the end, I think Affinity probably ekes out a win on this one, just because of the price.